Welcome to Season 4, Episode 16 of Angela Watson's Truth for Teachers. I'm your host, Angela Watson, and I'm here to speak life, encouragement, and truth into the minds and hearts of educators and get you energized for the week ahead. Today, I'm going to share some thoughts on 5 of the trickiest coworker problems you might encounter as a teacher. Visit truthforteachers.com to get the transcript, links to recommended resources, and share your thoughts on the show. So this is going to be an Ask Angela Anything style episode where I attempt to answer 5 coworker-related questions in 15 minutes. But I'm going to format things just a little bit differently. Instead of reading specific teachers' questions, I've identified 5 problems with coworkers that people frequently ask me about. So I'm going to share 5 basic scenarios, and hopefully if you're facing any of them, you'll be able to apply the advice regardless of the particulars of your situation. So scenario 1 is this. Your coworkers pop over on a daily basis and they say, "So, what are we doing this afternoon?" and expect you to do all the lesson planning and preparation for them. Now, I know some of you listening might find it hard to believe that this happens, but let me tell you, I've seen it many times and I've had a lot of teachers ask me about how to approach this. So first off, make sure your coworker knows how to plan and how to find resources, and give him or her the opportunity to co-plan. We never want to start with the assumption that someone is being willfully lazy or uncooperative. So pick a day and a time that you will be available to your coworkers. And when they ask what you're doing with your kids, say, "I'm doing an activity with blank today. We can plan together for next week if you want to know what I'm doing before the day of. Do you want to come by my room this afternoon and we can plan?" So the idea is that you're creating boundaries around your time. You're announcing when you'll be available to collaborate. You can also offer to divide up the work. So you can say, "Let's create a shared drive where we can put our resources together and come up with a plan. One of us can plan for X, one of us can plan for Y." You can use Google Drive, Dropbox, or an online lesson planning tool like planbook.com, and that will help you collaborate. The idea here is to turn the one-way requests into a true collaboration in which each of you is pulling his or her weight. If the team member isn't very strong with lesson planning, you may even consider dividing up the work another way. So for example, she or he could prep all the lesson materials for both classes. However, these suggestions will only work for teachers who truly do want to collaborate and aren't intending to just mooch off all your hard work. You'll be able to tell by their response to your suggestions for collaboration whether they actually have any desire to pull their own weight. Your colleague's either going to be super grateful for your help with planning, at which point you can point him or her towards resources or divvy up the work so that you're not solely responsible for their plans, or your colleague will make an excuse because they don't want to plan and they want you to do the work for them. If that's the case, just keep using that same line. "Today I'm doing blank. If you want to plan with me, let's set up a time to do it together." Depending on your personalities, you could also call him or her out on a little bit. Laugh and say with a smile, "Wait a second, you've asked me that 3 times this week. I know you're not trying to get me to do all your lesson planning for you. Tell you what, I'll give you the activities, but you have to take over recess duty for me." Figure out some sort of way to lightly make it known that this needs to be a two-way street, and stick to your guns after that. If things start to get tense or awkward, ask your colleague outright to do something for you. Say, "Okay, I'll give you my plans if you run my photocopies." That way it is a collaboration of some sort and not just you giving and them taking. Let's move on now to scenario number 2, in which your coworkers want to hang around and chit-chat, but you have work to do. Bonding with your coworkers is important, so do set aside a designated time to socialize, maybe during your break or during a weekly happy hour after school. However, it's important from a work-life balance perspective not to let chatty coworkers prevent you from getting work done when you're trying to concentrate. After all, 20 minutes a day of getting cornered in the hallway after dismissal, well, that's an hour and a half of precious time that you could have used for something else. So here's a few practical suggestions to dissuade the chatterers from hanging around your room. If you have a window in your classroom door, move your desk or your personal workspace away from the door so that no one can see if you're in the room before and after school. Keep the lights off, keep the door locked. That way, if anybody comes by, they won't see signs that you're there, and when they try the doorknob and discover it's locked, they'll give up and go away. If you're concerned that your administrators will think that you're arriving to school late and leaving early, Put a sign on the door that says, "Please do not disturb meetings and projects in progress." That way people know that you're working, and you can take the sign down when you actually do leave for the day. Or just use this strategy during your planning time when it's obvious you're still in the building. An alternative, of course, is to work someplace other than your classroom where you won't be disturbed, maybe in a quiet corner of the library or another out-of-the-way place. If you have to have colleagues in the room with you during your planning time or your break, maybe you have a push-in teacher or an aide, or you share a classroom, try putting headphones on to signal that you're not available to talk. You can use a white noise app to filter out distractions if you don't want to listen to music. When you find yourself stuck in a conversation, look for that first opportunity to politely bow out. Frame your exit in a way that makes it sound as if you're being considerate of the other person's time, as well as your own. Just say, "Well, I know you have a ton of stuff to do. I won't hold you up. I'll see you later," and keep it moving. If there's one or two people in particular who just don't seem to get the hint, be direct with them. Make it sound like the problem is your own temptation to waste time, which is probably at least partially true. That way your coworker doesn't feel like this is a personal thing against him or her. You can say, "My partner or my spouse has been bugging me to come home earlier in the evening, so I'm really trying to focus on work when I'm at school so that I can get out of here on time. If you see me just hanging around and chatting, please remind me that I told you this so that I can stop myself and get back on track." A third tricky scenario that you might encounter with coworkers is this. A clique of teachers has pitted themselves against the rest of the staff, and if you're not one of them, you're either wrong or out of the loop. Now, teacher cliques are a really complex issue. But just in general, when you feel sidelined by a group of teachers who don't seem to like you or won't include you, it's important to conduct yourself in a way that puts you above reproach. If you want to have a voice and influence in the school, but you aren't part of the clique, you need to be the consummate professional whom any rational person respects. When you have the reputation of being an outstanding, kind, innovative, dedicated teacher, you generally will have some pull and influence in the school, and most people will respect you even if you're not part of the clique. So basically, my advice is to focus on being a really good teacher. Focus on the kids. Focus on doing the job you're called to do. The people you work with don't have to be your best friends. You don't have to socialize with them. 90% of the time, you're alone in your classroom with just your students anyway. A situation with cliques is where the isolated nature of teaching actually works to your advantage. So this sort of segs into the next scenario, which is when you don't feel like you fit in with your coworkers and you constantly feel isolated and alone. If you have just one good friend and ally in the school, that's usually enough so that you won't feel totally alone. So look for that one person that you can count on and collaborate with, and stay focused on doing an amazing job for kids together. Your main social group does not have to come from your coworkers. In fact, your clique might be a group of teachers that you connect with online. Find your people, your tribe, wherever they are, and try to disconnect emotionally and mentally from the toxic dynamics you're witnessing in your school. It's also really important to be patient in these situations. I taught at 8 different schools in my teaching career, and in some of them, I made very close friends within the first 2 months of school. And in others, it took me 2 years to go beyond small talk and to feel like anyone there had my back. In some schools, just about the whole staff felt like a family. And in others, I felt like I could only relate to a handful of people. So know that it takes time to build relationships and make connections. And don't rush it. Also know that dynamics will change every single year as some teachers leave and others come in. Getting transferred to another grade level or another department can completely change things for you too. So if you're feeling alone in your school, focus on finding that one person you can really connect with, and look for a larger group of teachers to build community with outside of your school, maybe online. Be patient, be open, be true to who you are, and trust that your outlook and perspective will draw the right people to you in time. The final situation that you might encounter with coworkers is when you feel like your colleagues are behind the times and they refuse to change, when they just sort of resist everything new that you try and make it difficult to collaborate. This is another situation in which you want to remember that all your support does not have to come from your colleagues. That's a bit like expecting your spouse or your partner to be your only sounding board for every problem. Don't put that burden on just one person or just one group of people. Broaden your personal learning community and connect with innovative teachers online and in other schools. The last thing that you want to do is focus on what your coworkers aren't doing. Because the moment they get the sense that you think you're a better teacher than they are, you're going to be shut out for real. It's very important to be positive and supportive, not only to your colleagues' faces, but also behind their backs and in your mind. Out of the overflow of the heart, the mouth speaks. And if you're constantly bemoaning how behind the times your colleagues are, that heart attitude is going to come out, whether you mean for it to or not. So offer support and resources in small doses, but never make your colleagues feel overwhelmed or feel like they're less than because they're not ready for all the new ideas that you're wanting to try. You want to get them curious about the change and feeling confident in themselves. When they feel empowered and understood and respected, they're going to be much more likely to leave their comfort zones. In terms of creating real change in school culture, this is what I did as an instructional coach. My approach has always been to work with the change makers first. Get the innovators together so that they can do amazing things, and let the effects trickle down from there to the teachers who are interested but not sure where to start. Once those who are on the fence hear about the results that the change makers got, some of those on the fence will willingly try it out. And then you've got a bigger group basically being evangelists for change. This will then trickle down to the teachers who are a little burned out, a little suspicious and cautious, but they're willing to try something new. And once you've got them on board, the momentum is shifted. You've created change within the school culture in which innovation is now the norm, and those who resist are on the outside looking in, welcome to join the group at any time. So focus on the people who do want to change. The best stuff in schools rarely happens from the top down. It's generally grassroots stuff with passionate teachers individually doing amazing things in their classrooms, and their ideas spread. Sometimes they spread like wildfire, and sometimes it's just a tiny spark. So be patient with your coworkers, be supportive, and inspire them to be their best. If you're dealing with a coworker situation that I didn't address in this episode, leave it in the comments for the blog post. Just head over to truthforteachers.com. I'll respond to your comment, and I may even feature your question on a future episode. Your takeaway truth for the week ahead is an unknown quote that I think applies to just about any situation you might be facing with your colleagues. And it's this: don't put the key to your happiness in someone else's pocket. Thanks for listening. Have a fantastic week. You can do this. And remember, it's not going to be easy. It's going to be worth it. Truth for Teachers is a proud member of the Education Podcast Network. Podcasts for educators, podcasts by educators. For more great podcast recommendations, go to edupodcastnetwork.com. That's edupodcastnetwork.com.